Hi all, my name is Paige Wiley. I'm the co-author of Worked Up, Navigating Calling After College, and today we're going to be talking about the myth that my work defines my worth. Now, there are two cultural narratives in our society when it comes to work. The first is that work means nothing, meaning that work is a necessary evil or a means to an end. We talked about this a little bit in the first myth, that work is something that we kind of sludge through in order to get to the rest of the week, the good part of the week. The second narrative, however, is that work means everything, that work is so closely tied with our identity and our purpose. The Atlantic actually coined a term called workism. This can be seen in hustle culture, no days off, when our work is so closely tied to our identity, and especially in our success. Work is not only necessary for a means of economic production, but it's also the center point of one's identity and life's purpose. The problem with this is that it kind of feels like idolatry. Now, it might sound like a harsh word, but idolatry happens when good things are elevated to ultimate things. I think it's a good starting point to believe that work is good, that work provides us with a means of stewarding our environments, of helping others, even giving us purpose, because God is a worker and we get to reflect Him in the work that we do, right? Those are good things. However, again, idolatry happens when good things are elevated to ultimate things. And the problem with idols is that they can't stay elevated. They eventually show us their weaknesses, they falter and they fall. Jobs can be lost, markets can crash. We know that what is good today is not always promised to us tomorrow. When I was a career counselor at my university, I sat down with students all the time that came in asking for help in how to find a career or major. And while it was really fun and I loved that job, I also noticed a lot of anxiety in those students who were coming in. And I don't think it was a lack of options or opportunities in making that choice, but I think it was because our work is increasingly more and more tied with our identity. That the question of what do you do didn't stop there, that it wasn't just about work, but that question of what do you do really translated to many people as who are you? Who are you and who are you going to become? That's a big question, right? And I think that anxiety makes a lot of sense. If our work is elevated to a high position that it doesn't need to be, that it shouldn't be intended to be, then it makes sense that that question of work becomes more and more anxiety-inducing. I know this because I was one of those students. I was extremely anxious about trying to find a major and career, and I didn't know where I was meant to be. God never came down from the clouds and told me exactly where I was meant to go, at what company or what country to move to in order to do His work. And so I was really anxious about how my identity was going to be displayed through my work. What I didn't know was that there were so many ways that I could honor Him in my work, that there wasn't just one right path, that my identity wasn't tied up in the one major I chose or the first job I had out of college, or even the length of my entire career path, but that my identity was in Christ. It first and foremost stemmed from Him, and that gives us a lot more freedom in order to choose and to succeed and to make mistakes in our work, that we're not defined by our work solely. So how do we address these idols in our hearts? How do we dismantle them and put them back in their proper place? Well, here's 3 things that I thought through that could potentially help with that. The first is thanking God for your work. I think that this helps us to put God in His proper place, understanding that He is the one giving us our employment, our purpose, our worth, that God is the one who helps us get up every day and get into the office or the job site or the field, that He is the one giving and that we are the one receiving. I think that helps us put into perspective those proper places. The second is praying for your work. Now, I don't mean just thanking God, but I mean praying for your projects, praying for your coworkers, praying for your leadership. What does it look like to bring God into the confines of your office space? What does it mean to allow him to come in and change the culture, or change your mindset, or change the spreadsheets, or the factory line, or the fields that you work in? What does that mean to actually bring God into it and to pray for it? I think the third thing is also to just establish healthy boundaries. If you are someone who knows that work is something that has a temptation to take over your life and your time and your mind space, how can you set the boundaries to allow it to be kept to its proper place? I think that looks like thankfulness and prayer, but I think it also means setting a time limit on how much you work one day. I think it means taking really intentional Sabbaths. Perhaps it looks like having a friend or an accountability partner who knows this temptation in your life and can help you to walk away when that temptation seems a little bit too strong. I think when we take all of these things into account, we get to dismantle the idols of work, and so that we understand that our identity rests first and foremost in Christ. That work is good and it gives us purpose and meaning, and it was meant to be good from the beginning. But ultimately, God gets to come back to its proper place, and our identity gets to be in Christ.